It's official. Wharf Road's days are numbered. While plans to replace the Harbourside Road have always been on the Honeysuckle drawing board, the details have been a long time coming. A 1.3 kilometre stretch of dual carriageway will replace the existing road at a cost of $2.4 million. A Central Coast company will start work at the end of the month, taking a year for completion. To be known as Honeysuckle Drive, it will be set further back than the existing road to create a much larger foreshore. Meanwhile, another residential development to help revitalise the city centre is about to go on sale. Menkins apartments of 29 units on Scott Street will include a refurbishment of the old Rundle's factory dating back to the 1890s, including retail, commercial and residential spaces and located metres from the Hunter Street Mall. The units will introduce a new style of living to the city.
Well, there's been plenty of people living in the East End, but actually living right in the city, which this is, that's a little bit different.
Following huge demand in recent months for high-density luxury units in Sydney, the developers are confident of strong demand for the $300,000 plus apartments.
I'm not quite sure it'll be quite as frantic as down at the Quay a couple of weeks ago, but we've had about 70 inquiries today.
Leaving little to the imagination, the project's marketers have made a detailed mock-up of the unit's furnishings, even housing the display in a unit with a similar view. Laura Saperstein, NBN News. The Newcastle Port Corporation has a plan, and if it comes together, it could mean a new lease of life for the Hunter's shipping and manufacturing industries. The corporation wants to privatise the operation of Eastern Basin Wharves 1 and 2, giving port users the opportunity to set up the waterside infrastructure they want.
I think what we're saying is to the private sector, what is it that you want? How can it best be accommodated? Will the port be a part of providing some of that infrastructure financing, or can the private sector do it on its own? And within that, what are the array of opportunities that open up?
The vision for the Eastern Basin is no meagre request for trade. Already the Port Corporation has pledged $1.6 million to extend the hardstand area for cargo. If interest is strong, millions more will be spent reclaiming land to increase the wharf length and extending the rail link down the spine of the basin. The aim is to transform Newcastle's reputation as a coal-only port to a major general import-export centre. To do that, the critical mass of trade through the harbour needs to be boosted, and that means enticing companies to move their entire upstream operations to the Hunter.
It's quite possible that manufacturers will move here as a result of increased port throughput of general cargo here. It is very, very possible.
Expressions of interest will be called for nationally and internationally as of tomorrow. By early October, the Port Corporation should be ready to call for tenders. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
Two of the best teams in the Premiership at Harker Oval this afternoon. West the best attacking team, South's the best defenders. But statistics counted for little with the Rosellas setting the early pace. Down 8-0, the Lions kicked out, lucky to escape with a warning. The visitors bombed a certain try in the shadows of half-time, second time lucky for Gary Bray. Back from the break, the Rosellas found space, quick hands and a dash to the try line to put the match out of reach. In the NBN Soccer League, Maitland and Wallsend played out a 1-1 draw, the same result West Wallsend and Broadmeadow, and in the other games today, wins to Western and Highfields. That match did everything to live up to expectations, both teams keen to run the ball and fire at will. Early shots went astray before Highfields finally broke through to break the deadlock. In the State Soccer League, the Adamstown Rosebuds beat the Rockdale City Suns 2-1. Lawn bowls in the final day today of the NDBA Singles Championships at Swansea. After knocking the defending champion out of the tournament in the morning semis, John Smith raced to an early lead thanks to pinpoint accuracy. Beresfield's Neville Wilson also found his touch on the quick greens, but the former state representative had his measure, winning 31-28.
Tonight's meeting is a chance for small business to speak out, and the new government is keen to listen. At a briefing this morning, local MP Bob Baldwin and Federal Minister for Small Business and Consumer Affairs Jeff Prosser outlined their agenda, discussing the party's commitment to small business.
You can't ignore the marketplace and competition, but what we're keen to ensure is that small business can have a fair crack at the competition.
With the influx of large shopping and retail centres, small businesses are finding the going tough. Retailer Jeff Woodland has worked in this shop for the past 15 years. Like many other small business operators, he believes that unless there are some legislative changes, small business will continue to struggle.
I can't see that it's going to become any easier, and I think that the future is still quite promising, but we're all going to have to work hard towards it.
The results of tonight's meeting will be presented to Parliament.
The Small Business Summit looks set to become a regular event, and there are also plans to introduce a job summit in a couple of months' time. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
Donating blood is difficult at the best of times, but it's now easier for Central Coast residents. Based on a South Australian idea, the roll-on, roll-off collection vehicle will visit shopping centres, businesses and high schools to make the Central Coast self-sufficient. Till now, the region has had to rely on outside supplies, but the local blood bank hopes the vehicle will boost supplies to 5,000 units a year. Gosford's Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mick Whalen, launched the mobile unit. Blood Bank Director Campbell Tiley is confident the vehicle will result in a major increase in blood supplies.
With this mobile blood collecting unit on the road, we really should be able to be self-sufficient in the area until well into the next decade.
The special vehicle will travel to donor locations. The donations will be placed in roll-on, roll-off refrigerated units to be taken to the blood bank in Gosford.
For those who thought they'd never see the Marl Lakes Ferry again, this is it. Stage 1 of the new and improved version. It's being built to last and is expected to carry up to 400 cars per day.
It's extremely important because it provides a link with the towns of Bulladila and Hawks Nest Tea Gardens for the locals and the visitors to the area in Marl Lakes National Park.
When stage 2 and 3 are completed, the ferry will be assembled at Raymond Terrace, then towed to Newcastle Harbour for launching. It's the first cable-driven vehicular ferry to be built in New South Wales for 40 years and is expected to be up and running in time for the September school holidays. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
It's a hard slog to the top, and the under-10s were working their way up in the finals day at the Country Championships in Newcastle. 18 and under top seed East Maitland's Jonathan Russell was given a harder workout than expected, taking the match from Port Macquarie's Dale Hyde 6-2, 3-6, 7-6. In the 16 boys, Shannon Bloom from Singleton defeated Tim Graham from Wyoming on the Central Coast 7-6, 4-6, 6-4. In the 16 girls, another Central Coast player featured, Gosford's Rebecca Hawkins outplaying Bowrell's Christy Chambers 6-1, 6-2. The Junior Championships are part of a series of tournaments statewide, the overall winners picking up a $1,000 scholarship. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Less than 24 hours into his new role as president of the Newcastle branch of the Australian Business Limited, and Rob Chenery is already making headlines.
The city could well be better off in that we still have this image of a dirty, grimy city. It's only a perception, but BHP is part of that.
BHP Steelworks is no longer the region's biggest employer, and Mr Chenery says its departure would not have the same impact as when he was boss in the early 80s. He says more concern should be shown to the streets of empty stores in Newcastle CBD. A long-time proponent of a light rail system and quicker development approvals, Mr Chenery's renewed the fight with old sparring partner Newcastle Council.
There's a lot of diverging views in council. They haven't yet sat down and worked out their vision, and until that occurs, development decisions will be longer.
Criticism of the Honeysuckle project has been rejected, with a call for similar developments in the city. One gets a feeling it could be an interesting 2-year term ahead. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
The Fijians looked a little unsteady at training tonight, Super League and former Fiji coach Graham Murray looking on. It was a different story in the Australian camp. The Kangaroos seemed ready to fire. Andrew Johns should be in for a feast of points, getting the goal-kicking duties in front of Rod Wishart.
I think he'll probably in the back of his mind, there could be maybe some records broken, so we'll be trying to score as many tries as we can.
While the players say it'll be tough going, the 86-6 record test score against South Africa last year isn't looking too secure. The only problem for the Aussies are some minor injuries. Big Adam Muir had his first run on a sore knee in 10 days. He didn't complete training.
There's not much use in giving it a big hard workout the night before the test in case it does blow up, so I'm looking forward to tomorrow night and I'm nearly 100%.
Ticket sales have been steady for tomorrow night's game. It's hoped up to 20,000 people will turn out for the test. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
While the Civic Theatre has thrived on a string of imported productions, the past 2 years has been a period of mourning for local theatre in the Hunter. While the region's peak theatre company fell by the wayside with crippling debts in 1994, many fledgling artists were forced prematurely out of the local nest.
It did leave quite a vacuum, and in fact I would say that some of the people that have been associated with the company have left town, looking for employment elsewhere.
But after 2 years battling to rid itself of debt and the stigma of collapse, the company today announced it was back. And the tough lessons of 1994 have given management a new economic bent. They've tapped into the solid financial resources of the Civic Theatre, meaning the risks of producing big local productions will be underwritten. The form of the partnership involves a 4-play subscription series at the Civic, including one major local production. According to the theatre's management, the arrangement will supplement small-time theatre that has managed to weather the difficult economic times in Newcastle.
This is really an opportunity to include and involve a lot of Newcastle people in a much more substantial play that will appeal to a much larger audience.
The Hunter Valley Theatre Company will draw on one of its past successes to launch its new era. The Venetian Twins, a local adaptation of an old classic, is the company's choice for its contribution to the subscription series. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
Playing on a hockey field in Atlanta.
Right, okay. For your achievements?
I think it's more a recognition of everyone, that everyone can get in and have a go at sport.
The Queensland semi-trailer driver was originally refused bail after he allegedly terrorised motorists and police during a 160-kilometre chase. The prosecutor had claimed Hayne was a potential danger to the public, but that decision was today reversed by Magistrate Michael Morahan, who said he wasn't impressed at all with the time it's taken the prosecution to compile its case. In deciding to allow Hayne bail, he described the lawyer's handling of the case as a real mess, saying nobody seems to know what's going on. He referred to his previous warning that if the prosecution didn't pull its act together, the accused would be let free. Mr Hayne's barrister asked that his client be allowed to return to Queensland. That request was denied. Bail granted on the condition that Hayne reside at a Warners Bay address, report twice daily to Charlestown Police and not drive a car. He was also required to pledge $5,000, his parents lodging security for another $5,000. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
Advanced banks across the Hunter and Central Coast closed for an hour today, with workers angry over possible branch closures and job losses. It follows talk of thousands of positions to go at the BHP and hundreds at Telstra. There's also industrial unrest with the maritime, building, university and ABC unions.
Back to the 70s, quite, yeah, and it's not going to get any better. It's obviously this is the start, and it will continue.
The Trades Hall Council says the Howard government's industrial relations policy is the main cause of the problem.
And I see over the next 3 years an ongoing turmoil while the government pursues these policies.
The unions are stepping up the heat. A mass trade union rally is planned in 13 days at the Newcastle Workers' Club. At the Advance Bank protest, union delegates claimed the banking sector is the next big issue, with jobs under threat across the board.
We could lose up to a third of branch-based jobs, and that's between 30 and 50,000 people. That's outrageous.
Because I think for a lot of us doing this next year when this comes out, how it can gift to Newcastle of the
involve a team rather than the rather soft. On the beach below Nobbies, I thank those authors here present. It was a fleeting vision, but one that haunted me. Inspired intervention, and Sally will know what I'm talking about. And I think Jane Gray.
"32-year-old Robert Lloyd Nelson escaped from Sydney's Long Bay Jail 2 months ago. Last night, police were called to this block of units in Newcastle East after reports of a wild fight involving knives.
She was crying for her life. She yelled out help and nobody else came out, but I knew something was going on. I mean, there's been trouble in these flats before.
Nelson and a 31-year-old woman friend had allegedly attacked another couple outside the units in what's believed to be an attempted robbery. Both of the victims received serious cuts to the hand. One ran to a neighbour for help.
And she was just so hysterical. I couldn't calm her down. There was just blood everywhere.
The attackers fled. Later at the service station, police arrested the woman. Nelson drove off in a white sedan. After a short chase, he slammed into another vehicle. It had been a daring escape, Nelson allegedly ramming a police car before the crash. He ran off into the night.
He has a fairly lengthy history, and some of the offences did involve violence, yes.
Police found a knife and a shotgun in the dumped car. The escapee is still at large. He's believed to be in Sydney. His alleged accomplice has appeared in Wallsend Court, charged with assault with intent to rob. She was refused bail and has been remanded in custody. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Peter Hafey bought this 2-hectare block at Allendale, northwest of Cessnock, to give his family a safe haven from the problems and pollution of city life. But it appears he may not have gone far enough. Last night, Cessnock Council voted against a rescission motion which effectively approves the rezoning of land, pending a health risk assessment. The 6-5 decision goes against Council's own advice and more than 100 objections. Mr Hafey could now have a crematorium as his closest neighbour, just a few hundred metres down the road.
I was shocked that they're still going against it. They're not listening to anyone. They're not listening to the residents, and that's what they're there for.
Residents fear emissions from the crematorium will pollute their tank water with mercury. Mr Hafey says he won't expose his 2 small children to any level of the dangerous metal.
Well, if they rezone the land, I'd have to consider moving, and at this stage, that's most probably what I'll do.
The public advocate for the venture, Mr John Cleves, says any fear is based on misinformation. He says similar crematoriums have been built around the world, with zero effect on the environment. Wine growers say the effect on tourism is more certain, with claims a crematorium would conflict with other land uses in the area.
There's a potential to do harm, and surely if there's a potential to do harm, the council deserves to make its decision conservatively. Why risk something?
Both sides say the issue is far from over. Hunter Valley Cremation says there's still a lot of work to be done before final approval. Residents and wine growers hope it never gets that far. Richard O'Leary, NBN News. Homes that aren't connected to a sewerage line rely on waste management systems. The technology, which can cost up to $5,000, treats all the waste from a house so it can be reused for irrigation. The only problem is most of them don't work or have serious faults.
The results basically show that there's about a 90 to 95% failure rate.
Environment Officer Jeff Green delivered his disturbing findings to representatives of councils at Newcastle University today. There's up to 20,000 systems installed in New South Wales alone, with claims many of them pose health risks to people. The fine mist producing more than water for the lawns.
Either by droplet or by ingestion or by actually through the intact skin, infect people with quite horrendous diseases.
The Health Department has developed new rules for waste management systems, but they won't be implemented until December.
The problem I see with that is that there are systems now that are being in the ground, or perhaps going in the ground, that aren't going to meet that same standard. And my question mark would be, why aren't they being tested?
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Apart from the injuries, it was training as usual at Marathon Stadium today. Even the coach was getting involved. 4 losses from the last 5 games has the critics working overtime, but really rejects claims the team is heading in the wrong direction.
I think the direction's pretty good, quite frankly. You know, all right, we've not got the results, but the team's performance I don't think has been any better all season.
The last 2 losses have perhaps been the hardest to handle. A fortnight ago, they were edged out by Canberra. On Monday, beaten in controversial circumstances by Brisbane.
We need a win, but if we perform to the level we performed against Brisbane, I think that should get us home.
Just as eager to turn around their form will be Norths. They were beaten by the Roosters last weekend and are keen to avenge the loss under point-scoring machine Jason Taylor.
Taylor's a very proficient kicker. And he's also features in most of the North plays, so we've got to put some pressure on him with the ball in his hands.
One factor swinging in favour of the Knights is the record between the clubs. Of the 13 matches, Newcastle has won 9, including 4 from 5 at Marathon. The most recent clash was that quarter-final in Sydney last year, which Newcastle won 20 points to 10. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
The question on all Knights fans' lips is whether the Burleigh second rower will stay with the club or take up a lucrative offer with North Sydney. Knights officials are confident of retaining Muir's services. However, there's been no word from Muir himself. The Knights say Muir is happy with the money side of the deal. Contractual clauses are causing problems. Meanwhile, the Knights have announced an unchanged lineup for Saturday's clash with competition frontrunners Manly. The side is O'Davis, Gidley, Grogan, Ainscoe, Beecham and the Johns brothers, and forwards Glanville, Muir, Marquette, Harrigan, Jackson and Butterfield. After the Sea Eagles pounding of the Sydney City Roosters overnight and the Knights' draw with Norths, Manly seem an imposing opposition. Not so, according to coach Mal Reilly. Coach Reilly is confident the Knights' extra match preparation will be a telling factor in the clash. He also admits this is an important game at season's end.
Every game from now on in is vitally important before the playoffs. And I don't think we can afford to have a bad game.
Blake Doyle, NBN News.